Hey guys, welcome back. Taylor here. And a few weeks ago, maybe like a month ago at this point, back when I had a beard, I spoke to you all about something called visual storytelling, which was the first point of this thing that I call the Narrative Triad. And I promised you that I would get back to the other 2 points of that triad. And so we're going to talk about number 2 today. Now, as a recap, if you have not watched that video was talking about how our body language, our gestures, like my hands right now, our clothing, our hairstyle, our facial expressions, all these things contribute to a visual story that we're telling all the time, 24/7, even while we're sleeping. And what that story does is that it tells other people how you want to be interacted with, or how you want the dynamic to go, or just what your general energy is. And it affects your interactions, it affects your relationships, it affects your self-confidence. There's tons of studies now that have been done about how your posture affects your mood. And if you're just like hunched down and low and you're like looking down and you're not really talking very loudly or anything like that, it affects your mood. It becomes the impulsion, it becomes the energy that goes into all of your interactions, and it affects it. So that's on the surface. That's the first step, because that's the thing that people can think about and control pretty easily. They can be like, all right, I'll just change my posture, or you know what, today I'm going to dress nicer, or something like that. They can make an adjustment pretty quickly just to kind of play around with their visual story. And I recommend you do that. It's pretty fun just to kind of test it out and feel what feels good, see what works. But number 2 is a little bit more difficult. Number 2 is what I call the internal narrative. So while the visual story was the external story that you tell the world, the internal narrative is the story that's inside you that you're telling yourself. Now, we all have self-talk. We all have very different levels of self-worth based on our self-talk, and the way that we speak to each other, the way that we speak to ourselves in our own minds, or just chatting to ourselves throughout the day. I don't know about you, but I talk to myself all the time. The way that we talk to ourselves is a result of the beliefs that we have about ourselves, about our life, about our career, about our relationships, about happiness, about fulfillment, what have you. Our beliefs determine how we talk to ourselves. Let me give you an example. If you thought that, for instance, you wanted to be an actor, and you really were interested in it, but for whatever reason, you grew up in a situation that taught you to believe that you're not good enough, that you would never amount to anything, that you would never succeed, that you would never become an actor. Don't even try to do anything hard, just do something safe and easy. You would grow up telling yourself, you know what, even though I want to be an actor, I remember that I'm not good enough to be it. I believe that, I'm convinced of it. And you'll just keep telling yourself, and you keep talking to yourself in a way that is self-deprecating, that's self-harmful, where you might go into any job or any relationship and still think that same thing, say those same things to yourself. So it creates this cyclical narrative inside you based on your beliefs that just circulates. It just continues, it keeps going, it keeps affecting your interactions, your career, your relationships. The worst part is that every time that something happens, like maybe you lose a job, and this belief that you're not good enough is reiterated or reinforced or confirmed, it just perpetuates the cycle. It reminds you, oh my gosh, I was right, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, etc. And that narrative just keeps going on. I will distinguish in a different video between story and narrative, because there's a newer framework for how to think about these two terms. But it suffices to say that story is defined as the individual little data points and events that occur in a given day. That could be a feeling state, that could be a conversation. That could be doing a workout of some kind. Any little event is a story. But the narrative is the meaning of that story. It's the overarching theme of all those stories coming together. And if all of those stories involve you, then the narrative is, what do those stories mean about you? And which leads us to self-talk. Okay? As soon as we have a meaning, we can create a belief about it, and then we create self-talk to reinforce it and perpetuate it and habituate it. So that over time, what happens is we just get used to this narrative, and it's just in us. Friends of mine, colleagues of mine call it the coding in our DNA that we have been listening to and just reading the code and reinforcing the code and repeating the code for years and years and years. Okay. Now, I know these examples so far have been pretty negative, but unfortunately, in the human condition, we often don't ever think that we're good enough. We often never have positive self-talk. We always beat ourselves up, wanting the next thing, wanting to succeed, wanting to be happy, wanting to fulfill some kind of expectation. If you watched my video last week, we talked about expectations and how expectations are the mother of all suffering. And a lot of them are fake. A lot of them aren't real. So let me ask you this. First question for you is, what kind of self-talk do you say to yourself pretty often on a daily basis? Can you identify if there's like a type of self-talk, or even just like a type of phrase, a type of sentence or a belief or a thought that you have pretty regularly just throughout your day, whether you're in relationships or in your job or talking to people? Is there some kind of thought that keeps recurring or maybe a feeling, maybe an emotion state, maybe a state of deflation or elation or pain or sadness or just awkwardness, whatever? Maybe there's something that you feel every day and you don't know the thought attached to it. If you're able to identify one of those things, maybe the feeling, maybe some certain thought that you think pretty regularly on a daily basis, or you are actually able to identify the type of self-talk and the language and the phrases that you use when you talk to yourself, that's going to be a huge, huge opportunity for you then to write it down and rewrite the self-talk. There's an actual system that you can follow to rewrite that self-talk, rewrite your belief systems. So the first step I want you to do today, the thing that I want you to do, the homework for you, is to answer that question first. I want you to draw awareness to the self-talk or the thoughts or these continual persistent feeling states that you have no matter where you are throughout your day. I wonder if you can pinpoint something that comes up a lot for you, because that'll help you identify what your internal narrative is. Okay? Now, let's zoom back out for a second. This topic is number 2 of 3 in what I'm calling the Narrative Triad. Section number 1 was the visual story. Section number 2 is the internal narrative. So, tying it together, if you're telling a certain visual story, maybe you're not very social, not very energetic, maybe you're not dressing the way that feels good, or you just like something's wrong with how you're presenting to the world and you just don't feel good about it, that's going to affect your internal narrative. If you don't feel good about yourself, then you're going to tell that to yourself. You're going to say that to yourself. And you're going to continue feeling that. So you circulate that story. You just keep cycling it. So ultimately, the reason why this is a triad is that you can think of it as a triangle. The third part we'll get to in another video. But if all of them are aligned, then if you find this true alignment between all three, then how you're presenting to the world matches up exactly with how you want to be talking to yourself and the beliefs that you follow. And then the other thing, number 3, which I'll tell you about soon, is going to help you be super productive and successful and confident on a daily basis in whatever you're doing in your life. So that's where we're going with this. I wanted to zoom out a little bit and just say that these three pieces are all in pursuit of life fulfillment, life confidence, life happiness. And so, again, the question for you today, I don't want to bog you down too much, the question for you to think about is, with regard to internal narrative, what is a feeling state or some kind of thought or even some kind of phrase, some kind of self-talk worded belief that you notice you experience or you think about pretty regularly on a daily basis? So, good luck. Let me know what you think. Please feel free to respond in the comments. I would love to hear what you come up with. For a lot of people, this is the first time they've ever thought about this stuff, so I don't want you to feel alone. You can respond in the comments, or you can message me privately through my website. The link is down below in the comments section. Also, please subscribe to my channel so that you can learn what number 3 is of the Narrative Triad, as well as the fact that if you want to talk about this kind of stuff with me, go ahead and follow that same link below in the description and schedule a free call with me so we can talk about it. Have a great day, guys. Good luck, and I will talk to you soon.